underdogs, underestimated, we the ones.
It's the Underdogs back with you here in mid-December. The weather's getting cold, the days are getting short, but our takes are getting even hotter. Just kidding. We don't do hot takes. We do math. I'm Jordan Brenner, your co-host, joined as always by my co-host, Peter Keating. Peter, how the hell are you?
Jordan, how you doing? Jordan, I'm great. You know why? I am living DeVito Loca. Oh, that's right.
For those of you listening to the pod, Peter is holding up a New York tabloid cover of Tommy DeVito.
But the pun works either way. You don't have to see it to realize, DeVito Loca. I mean, here we are. We're all of a sudden having exciting NFL games again here in this neck of the woods.
Well, we will see if anyone will be going with DeVito Loca when we get to our Week 15 NFL underdog picks. Peter also has an epic rant, even for him, planned at the end of the show for why you're all idiots when it comes to the Ohtani contract.
No, it's not saying everyone's idiots. Some of the coverage has been idiotic. Let's just say that.
Let's see what happens. But first, we want to talk about a particular type of underdog that has come really squarely into the public consciousness in the past few weeks. That's backup quarterbacks. And if you were only sort of paying attention, you might have thought, wow, backup quarterbacks are pretty damn good. They do cool things. Tommy DeVito, Jake Browning's had, 30 plus points, 2 games in a row. Hey, I tuned in that one game where Josh Dobbs didn't even know the playbook and was, completing passes left and right. If only that were true. Peter, we've done research. We actually have an article coming out in The Athletic this week, which you should definitely check us out. We'll be writing there regularly about just how bad overall backup quarterbacks perform in the NFL. It is truly an underdog in the most broad terms, is it not?
Yes, underdog quarterbacks can come in and get everybody on their side and rally the flag and get the team going. But Jordan, there's a huge gap between, actually, it's not even the top 30 quarterbacks and everyone else in the world. It's kind of like the top 10 or 15 quarterbacks. And what you got to understand is, everything in life is distributed in a bell curve, right? Everything is like this hump-shaped curve that trails off at both ends. And NFL quarterbacks are probably, try to think of a profession, even outside of sports, like what, astronauts, maybe concert violinists, where there's like this way, way, way to the right end of the bell curve. You're the very top performers in your field. That, first of all, makes it very hard to replace you. Second of all, it makes the drop off between you and somebody who's just average at what you do pretty great. And the drop off from there to subpar performers is ginormous. And it's probably just getting worse as we go on, and there are more injuries, and also teams invest so much more in this one player per team who, they hang everything on. They get all the money, they get all the reps, they get protection from injuries. And if the guy goes down, it's a real problem.
So we'll get into some of the numbers and the team that's been hit at such a level. I had to double check your numbers to make sure they were right. So let's talk about Josh Dobbs. Okay. He comes to Minnesota via trade. The week he's added to the team, Jalen Hall starts, gets hurt. Dobbs is thrown onto the field. You know the narrative. He didn't even know some of the guys' names. He didn't know all the plays, and he engineered a comeback victory. And then he looked great the next week. And the thought was, how is this? How was Minnesota the only team smart enough to trade for him? How is this guy not an NFL starter? How did everyone get him wrong? Well, it turns out he's been a backup and a journeyman for a reason. There's a reason why he's been with Pittsburgh and Tennessee and Arizona and Minnesota in the last 4 years. By last week, he was producing 3 points for Minnesota, getting benched. He's not starting this week. Mullins is. And I think that's an underrated aspect to this whole thing, is that part of the reason these guys are backups is they might be able to put together a decent showing when they haven't been scouted or they haven't been, a small sample size. These guys get exposed over a long period of time, right?
Yeah, look, I think anybody anywhere can come in as a replacement and in a short period of time because you're so upset, right? Everybody is. The teammates, the general manager, the fans are upset that there's now this hole there. Somebody fills it, it gives them a jolt. Then the short-term production is good, then everybody gets excited and you can get something out of that, but only for a short amount of time, and we shouldn't overreact to it. I'll tell you something else. In the NFL from week to week, luck and also the proportion of success you're getting from offense and defense go way up and down from week to week, right? If you hit it right and you get in there and your team happens to play well for a couple of weeks, it can be a great story. And we shouldn't deny those great stories, but we also shouldn't expect backup quarterbacks at that level to sustain a good offense over a length of time.
Well, right. And it's also about who you play. So talk about narratives that are
Sure.
Talk about narratives that are ridiculous. I hate to say it to, a show where my co-host is a big Giants fan and our producer, Sarah McCrory, is actually an insane Giants fan. Like, she will cut someone one day. But Tommy DeVito, it's a nice story, okay? That's all it is. This guy isn't a starting quarterback. Here's what they beat they beat the Commanders, who have the worst defense in the league. Yeah, he threw for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure my daughter could have done that. Okay. They beat the Patriots. They scored 10 points. Okay. Their defense is winning them games. Green Bay, they scored 24 points. He had a nice last second drive. He still threw for 158 yards. And again, they're living off turnovers by their defense.
Okay. Let me push back. Let me push back.
Let me finish
one
really
little
quick.
bit. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the people who are saying he should start over Daniel Jones last year, Daniel Jones was going against teams like the Cowboys and the 49ers without his left tackle. It's so stupid. This guy will be exposed just the way Josh Dobbs was. There's a reason why he was not even basically on a roster. Maybe he makes himself into a decent backup, and we'll get into what that even means in a second. But stop it with the narrative. Stop it.
Okay. But you can get good things out of bad seasons, and the Giants may have in DeVito a backup quarterback, right? I mean, we may say that. Now, it may not seem like that big a deal, but we're saying it is a big deal. If you have a competent backup quarterback who can step in when there's a problem, that's something. That's a find. No, he shouldn't be starting. And I'll tell you something else. If you can go look at this up on Pro Football Reference for any game. You can see the expected points added by a team's offense or defense in any game. And some of these games where the backup quarterbacks have looked great, it's actually the defense and special teams that has carried the team. That's been the case with the Giants and DeVito. It's been the case with Joe Flacco, too. Joe Flacco's looked good. He's been better than anyone could have hoped for, but that team's being carried elsewhere up and down the field. So there are situations. Look, Browning in Cincinnati, it looks like they found something. You can find someone who can kind of serve as a replacement level quarterback. That ain't nothing, but it's not a starter.
Well, let's get into the worst situation that we've seen in our spreadsheets by far, and it's the other team in New York, the Jets. You take the numbers here, because every time I look at them, they are so ridiculous they can't be true.
Okay, talking about expected points added. The Jets, in a blink of an eye, as everybody knows, went from Aaron Rodgers, who is in the top 5 in the league over the past 5 years, to Zach Wilson, who expected points added, and again, all EPA does is it looks at how you should score at the beginning of a play and at the end of the play and looks at the difference between the two. It's hard to separate out a quarterback and his offensive line and all those other elements, but it's a very good rough gauge of how you're moving a team up and down the field. Zach Wilson has cost his team more points this year than Brock Purdy, who leads the whole NFL in expected points added, has added to the 49ers. The gap between playing what Rodgers would have given the Jets had he just stuck to his level of the past 5 years and what Wilson and for one game, the legendary Tim Boyle have produced instead, Jordan, it's over 200 points. It's over 230 points. The Jets fans are right to believe what they've seen on the field. You give the Jets half those points, they'd have 8 wins. You give them all those points without even figuring out how much better their defense would have been, they'd be leading the division. They'd have 10 wins. This is a ginormous chasm. You can hear Jets fans' dreams crashing into the canyon between what Rodgers, just assuming the last few years were his established level, including last year when he was hurt, and what Wilson's done this year is over 200 points.
It's really amazing, because I think the question is why? Why is there this gulf? Why aren't there even seemingly 32 men capable of playing this position at a professional level. And then why is the drop off so vast from the guys backing them up? We mentioned in our piece that in other sports, you'll see like a 28-year-old career minor leaguer come up and throw a shutout in baseball, or a middling prospect come in and become like a middle of the rotation pitcher. Okay. You see guys step in who don't play often in basketball when there's a couple injuries, step in and score 20 points all the time.
Where we talk about Philip Humber throwing a perfect game in baseball.
Right. But even if you wanted to go for like larger sample sizes, right? Like there are guys who you've never heard of. There's Nestor Cortez, right? Who step in and become like good, solid major league pitchers who don't have the pedigree. There's certainly not this drop off from 10 to 15 pitchers to the point when you get to 40 who can't even do the job. But that's what you have. Do you have any theories on why so few guys can do this at a professional level?
Well, I think there's some bad organizational decisions being made judging this mass of potential backup quarterbacks. There are players who are competent enough not to kill your team if they step into a role. And you can think about who they are, Teddy Bridgewater or Marcus Mariota, or this year, Gardner Minshew, who's actually has the Colts. Maybe it's not all because of him. It's certainly not all because of him, but has the Colts playing better than anyone. Although I did take them in the over-under.
Oh my God.
But I mean, better than anyone would have expected. But you have guys like Brian Hoyer or Brett Rippon who have started games in the last year. Teams have to distinguish between competent backups and where you really fall off the cliff, where you're basically ending up starting emergency starters.
But Peter, there aren't a lot of Tyrod Taylors out there. There aren't a lot of Teddy Bridgewater. So saying you have to distinguish, yes, I think we both would say that teams should probably invest more if it's a marginal difference of a couple $1 million to get one of the few.
$3.5 million this year. I mean,
right.
That's not expensive.
If it's a couple $1 million to get one of the few truly reliable backups, it is absolutely a differentiator that a team with playoff hopes should make. But what I'm saying is that doesn't answer why there are so few guys who can play at even that level. Is it that all the reps go to the starters? Is it the way NFL teams groom quarterbacks? Is it the way preparation is done week to week? There has to be something in there.
Well, I'll say this. The number of quarterbacks who contributed positively to their teams, positive EPA, seems like a low bar, but it isn't, and participated in at least 400 plays, again, semi-regular, right, has ranged from like 13 to 20 over the past decade. My point being, and by the way, only 12 are on pace to do that this year. My point being is, whatever it is, it's not particularly new. There have never been as many productive, regular playing starting quarterbacks over the past 10 years anyway, and I suspect longer than that, than there are as many of those as there are teams in the league. It's always,
but still,
they're too hard to go around. It's a low number.
I know. And even more than the low-level starting quarterback issue, whether it's a Jimmy Garoppolo or guys who are on the fringe of starting, at least those guys could probably be a Tyrod Taylor-esque backup, right? I'm curious about why the drop-off is so severe after QB 40 or so. So if you're a backup quarterback out there and you have an answer for why you're not better and more capable of playing an NFL game, please hit us up on Twitter and explain, because it truly doesn't make sense.
I suspect it's like no team wants to develop a designated hitter. No team wants to develop a player as a backup quarterback. People are managers or general managers are obsessed with the idea that if you draft a quarterback, it's got to be a 10 to 15 year generational starter. Those are where all the resources go.
Well, I want to come back to this maybe with a guest at some point, and we'll investigate. But it's time to investigate our Week 15 underdog picks after this. We're back with our Week 15 NFL underdogs contest. Charlotte Wilder authored another strong week for Team Sarah and our guests, getting the Giants an outright win. They were getting 6.5 points against the Packers, so she got the full 3 points. But she was beaten by me. I had the Patriots getting 6 with another outright win against the Steelers. I also got a push in the scintillating Raiders-Vikings game. And Peter got 1 point for the Rams covering against the Ravens. That brings the season standings to Team Sarah, 31.5 points. Jordan, 24, and Peter, 19.5. Let's see if we can do something about this. This week, there was a document leak of Sarah's potential picks earlier in the day. You don't know what this might mean. I'll tell you what it's going to mean with the first pick that I have. I'm taking Sarah's New York Giants getting 6 points at the New Orleans Saints. Just as I get finished ripping Tommy DeVito as not being the star that everyone wants to make him out to be, I'll pick him. Why? The Saints aren't any good, okay? Yes, they beat the Panthers by 3 touchdowns last week. Woohoo. You beat a 1-win team. They have looked like a mediocre team all year. Derek Carr, first year in the system, has looked terrible. They have offensive injuries. They are not a team that should be favored by 6 points against anyone, let alone a team playing defense as well as the Giants are right now. I look for the Giants to continue forcing turnovers, getting short fields. I think Saquon Barkley will continue to play well in this game. At the very least, the Giants should be able to cover. And strategically, I love the ability to get them at 6 points, giving me the option for the 3-point bonus if they win outright. So give me the Giants +6 at New Orleans. Up next, Peter.
Wouldn't surprise me if the Giants covered, but they had now been lucky this season, and the Saints have been unlucky, and it's a bad combination when those two meet. I can't trust your pick, Jordan. Then again, I'm in last place, so I have to go for a Hail Mary here, and I have to go big. So let's go with the biggest possible pick on the board. Give me the Cardinals +13.5 against San Francisco. Look, Arizona's a home underdog. Kyler Murray is a huge improvement over the backups, like we were talking about just now, over the backups behind him. I don't expect the 49ers to not take anyone seriously in particular, but come on, let's face the facts. They play Baltimore on Christmas in a potential Super Bowl preview. 41% of the bets, but 53% of the money is on Arizona. The big money knows something. Get me back in this pennant race for this underdogs. Give me the Cardinals by a ginormous spread of 13.5.
The problem is strategically, you don't get any more points than if like a 6-point team wins. So the question is, do you think they could win outright?
Probably not. But if you look at some of the teams that are between 6 and this gigantic spread, like, am I putting my money this week on the Patriots against Kansas City or the Jets? I am not. Give me Kyler Murray's looked pretty good. I mean, This is one of those times where the one's might go up for a week, one might go down for a week, and you get a good result.
All right. Well, Sarah's got 2 picks in a row. Can she keep the hot streak going for her and her many teammates?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to point out that Jordan actually outed himself as a cheater by taking my cheat sheet that I make on the subway on the way into the studio for 5 minutes when I look at the numbers. So I'm just putting that out there. And I'm also scared that Jordan actually picked the Giants, that now that means they're going to lose because normally he bets against his own team. But anyways,
I don't think it took the Pentagon Papers equivalent of a leak to figure out that our producer, who was ready to wear a Christmas, well, maybe not a Christmas, but a giant sweater to the holiday party today,
It's a Giants Christmas sweater and it does light up.
Oh, excellent. All right.
For my first pick, I'm going to take the Jets +8.5 at the Dolphins. My reasoning, not much, but the Jets blew out the Texans last week. Zach Wilson, AFC Offensive Player of the Week, and the Dolphins lost pretty embarrassingly to the Titans. So I think the Jets have a lot to play for. They're still mathematically in it, and they're talking about Aaron Rodgers being able to play. I think they're trying to get a win so that he can end up playing, so I'm taking the Jets.
All right, pick number 2.
Pick number 2, similar reasoning. I'm taking the Seahawks +4 at home against the Eagles. And why? Because they're coming off 4 straight losses, so I feel as though they also have something to play for. They're still in it. They're looking for a win, and they're not a bad team. They've just seem to have a bad streak going here. And also, are the Eagles unraveling? I don't know. I hope so. David Carr, friend of the program, did call for Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts to be benched. So who knows what's going on there?
Wow.
That's just insane. Speaking of insane, Peter, you've got one more pick.
All right. Somebody help me out of the dumpster, because that's where I am diving to pick the Carolina Panthers +3 at home against Atlanta. Look, I like picking home underdogs. I like betting against the public after a team has a terrible game, which Carolina certainly did. But look, the Panthers, while they have been pretty bad, are 1-5 in games decided by a touchdown or less. The over-under on this game is 35. It's the divisional matchup. Like I said, Carolina's been the unluckiest team in the year in the league this year. So give me the Panthers +3.
All right, for my final pick, I really should be taking another 6-point spread so I can catch Sarah. That would be the strategic thing to do. But I just have a game I really like, and normally I'll give you a bunch of advanced metrics why I like it. This one, it comes much more down to feel. I'm going to take the Bears +3.5 at the Browns. I like the way they're playing. I like what Montez Sweat has done for their defense. I think Justin Fields is another guy who people gave up on far too fast. He and DJ Moore have a real combination. And look, the Browns defense is suffocating at home. But you mentioned in our backup quarterback segment that Joe Flacco has been a bit lucky so far. Remains to be seen what he'll do over a larger sample. I think getting the hook here, getting the 3.5, I think this will be a tight game back and forth. So I like the Bears to cover and maybe to win outright. So let's take the Bears +3.5.
Bears seem to be rounding into the team that we thought they might approach this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you put your money on the Bears, you might still have a shot here at an over-under. And speaking of teams that put some money on someone, all right, so Shohei Ohtani with the most incredible, historic, controversial contract in sports history, $70 million a year, $68 million of it per year deferred. Lots of hot takes on this, but Peter, you have a smart take.
Jordan, this contract has been reported wrong every which way. There were reporters chasing what they thought every one of Ohtani's moves were. You see the report about the flight going from LA to Toronto, which they said, they actually wrote, who else could be on the plane flying to Toronto except Shohei Ohtani? Well, it turned out to be Robert from the Shark Tank. Ohtani wasn't even on the plane. So then the contract gets done, gets reported as a $700 million deal. So $2 million a year Ohtani's going to get for the next 10 years, and then $68 million a year for the following 10 years after that, deferred, no interest. That is not a $700 million deal. Look, everything in life can be expressed either as an amount over time or a lump sum. That's why people are on your TV always saying, sell me your life insurance, because they'll give you a lump sum for the amount that you would get over time, or cash it in your pension or your 401k. All right, look, here's the deal. If I have an apple tree, okay, I have an apple tree on my front lawn. All right.
Oh, are we getting a Peter analogy?
Yeah,
an
apple
jingle
tree
for a Peter analogy.
Let's say it gives you a 10 apples a month. So 120 apples a year. You can sell the apples for $1 a piece. If you think the tree's going to last 5 years, does that mean you're going to give me $600 for the tree? No, it does not, because a storm could knock the tree over. The tree could get hit by lightning. The tree could get a disease. $1 today is always worth more than $1 tomorrow. So when you report these numbers, when you think about these numbers, you have to discount them somehow. So that's how accountants do it. That's how financial managers do it when they think about a big plan, like to build a bridge or something. They take the amount over time, they discount it, they add it up, and that's the amount of money. If there's 3% inflation, okay, that Ohtani is going to erode the value of his contract a little bit. This contract's worth $462 million in today's dollars, not $700 million. More important, the Dodgers, okay, are going to have an average annual value on this contract of $46 million, not $68 million. So they save all that in luxury tax money. They can also use the $68 million a year that they're not paying Ohtani now on other players or other talent or developing stuff if they want. So the winners and the losers about this are kind of being reported wrong, okay? The winners, obviously the Dodgers, because they get to use other money now. They get to save on the luxury tax. Ohtani's another huge winner. If he wants to move to a low tax state sometime in the next 10 years, he can do that and avoid taxes to get his money back. But he's not making $700 million, okay? The underdog in this situation is basic math. The only reason you have to dislike this contract is because your team didn't think of doing it this way first. Ohtani makes enough money now that he can defer money till later. Okay. Ohtani has no reason to think the Dodgers are going out of business. So you should always want to take money from an established business as late as you can if the deal works for you, because it certainly works for the Dodgers. So,
well, that rant worked for me. It was as good as advertised. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, listeners. Please follow us on Twitter at Jordan Brenner, at Peter Keating NJ, and we'll be with you next week.
Stop chasing empty airplanes and get out your calculators. That's my advice.